Hi, I'm Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny, and really humid Naples, Florida. So, you're a landscape, real estate, or architectural photographer and you're considering making the move to the Micro Four Thirds system of either Panasonic or Olympus, and you need an ultra-wide-angle lens. So, what are your options? Well, today we take a look at the Panasonic 7-14mm f4 lens and ask this very important question. Will the combination of this lens and our Micro Four Thirds body produce the results that are good enough to move you away from a traditional DSLR camera? Well, let's have a look. Ultra-wide-angle lenses and Micro Four Thirds camera bodies. Outside of a fisheye lens, the Samyang's 7.5mm and Olympus's own 9 to 18mm, there really is only one current ultra-wide choice for the entire Micro Four Thirds system, and that is the pricey Panasonic 7-14mm f4. Introduced in March of 2009 and offering a full-frame equivalent field of view of 14 to 28mm, this lens is more than wide enough for nearly all wide-angle applications. But given its 5-year-old design, does this lens, in combination with a modern Micro Four Thirds camera body, deliver image quality that's good enough to compete with the likes of full-size DSLRs and their respective wide-angle lenses? Okay, so first up is build quality. And for starters, the 7-14 is made out of a really nice grade of plastic, and the lens mount is made out of metal. It's lightweight and kind of stubby, especially when compared to the likes of lenses that you'd mount to a traditional DSLR. It comes in at just under 12 ounces, which balances really well with the rather smallish Micro Four Thirds bodies out there, like the OMD EM5 that I have it mated to here. The focus and zoom rings are smooth, but the focus ring is, to my hand, slightly better dampened than the zoom. You'll notice too that the elements move back and forth inside the lens barrel when you're zooming, and you can actually see that happening. Now, due to the curved and bulbous nature of that front element, screw-on filters are unfortunately not an option. Now, on the inside, there are 16 elements in 12 groups, and there are 7 rounded aperture blades for some nice bokeh rendering. Panasonic also claims that the lens elements are multi-coated to reduce flare. And finally, the aperture ranges from f4 to f22. Unfortunately, the lens is not weather sealed, and given its rather lofty price point, that certainly is disappointing. But all in, it's a decent combination. Now, the lens would have scored slightly higher if it was in fact protected from the elements. So for build, it gets a solid 8.5 out of 10. So up next is focus speed and accuracy. Now, generally speaking, when you're shooting wide angle, focus speed isn't always a prime consideration, as more often than not, you're shooting still subjects at narrow apertures like f6.3, say, to f11, meaning you're going to have a really wide depth of field, so most of what you're shooting is going to be in focus anyway. That said, the Panasonic surprises, as it focuses very quickly, nearly silently, and very, very accurately. The only real issue that I ran into was in low light, when the lens hunted quite a bit, even more so than what I'm used to, and even when there seemed to be an obvious contrast point that you would figure the lens could see and could lock focus on. Of course, that could be a function of the OMD that I'm using, but I really don't have that issue with other lenses mated to the OMD, so I'm really not sure. But low light nit aside, which is where a lot of lenses struggle anyway, the Panasonic impresses and gets a 9.5 out of 10 for focus speed and accuracy. So up next is optical quality and the quality of the results. We told you it's built pretty well and it focuses quickly and accurately, but at the end of the day, it's about the optics. And as for image sharpness, at its widest aperture of f4, I'm consistently getting sharp results across the frame, with great, excellent center sharpness and really good edge sharpness. Stop down, however, the image quality really doesn't improve all that much. It starts to get worse at really narrow apertures like f11 when diffraction sets in. Now, there are a couple of important issues with the 7-14 that are in need of mentioning, but only one is of a real concern. For starters, one of the really neat things about the Micro Four Thirds world is that the bodies correct the distortion that these lenses produce, regardless of whether you put an Olympus lens on a Panasonic body or vice versa, which is fortunate because the 7-14 would undoubtedly show huge distortion. Lucky for us, we don't have to deal with that. Now, unfortunately, when you mount a Panasonic lens to an Olympus body, the camera does not correct the chromatic aberration. And even with that, and even though there is visible chromatic aberration with the Panny, it's no more than you might expect from an ultra-wide angle. Where I did run into some issues was with flare. I got some very strange and ugly flare patterns and colors with the 7-14. You can see that in this flare photo. So much for the multi-coatings reducing flare. Now, in the 7-14's defense, flare is in fact an issue with nearly every wide-angle lens, even the really high-end ones from both Canon and Nikon. So be aware of that when you're in the field shooting, as the flare that this lens creates has the potential to ruin a shot. Now, even with those nits, the 7-14 is still a very capable lens that can deliver the goods. However, as with all of my reviews, rather than talking about the image quality, it's probably better if I just show you the image quality. The next minute or so will be a series of stills and video clips showcasing the optical quality of the Panasonic 7-14mm, and the Panny does not disappoint. So last up, and arguably most importantly, is value. When you're the only game in town, you have the ability to more or less charge whatever you want. It also makes it a bit more difficult for reviewers like me to rate the lens's value, as there's really nothing else in the marketplace to compare it to. And that will hold true until Olympus debuts the 7-14mm f2.8 Pro in 2015. At $968, the 7-14 is by no means cheap. In fact, for a micro four thirds lens, it's definitely on the pricey side. Now, I'd probably be a bit more critical of the price if the lens didn't deliver the image quality, but the fact of the matter is, the Panny does deliver. Moreover, it's built pretty well and offers a fast and silent focus motor. On the downside, there's no weather sealing, there's some ugly flare patterns, there's no ability to screw on filters, and the aforementioned high price. But if you're going to make the switch to micro four thirds and you need ultra wide angles, there really aren't a lot of other viable options out there. So for value, we're going to give the 7-14 an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, it's that time again. Time to summarize this review and draw some conclusions about the Panasonic 7-14mm f4. So here goes. The build quality. It's made out of a fine grade of plastic with a metal mount. The focus and zoom rings are smooth and really well dampened without being too tight. On the downside, there's no screw-on filters because of the bulbous nature of that front element, and sadly, the lens is not weather sealed. All in though, we thought it was a pretty solid effort and gave the build an 8.5 out of 10. Autofocus speed and accuracy. Though fast focus isn't always the top consideration for a wide-angle lens, the 7-14 does a really nice job locking onto its subjects very quickly and very accurately. It struggles like a lot of lenses in low light. However, more often than not, you're going to be using a lens like this for landscape and architecture in decent lighting, and in that regard, the Panasonic excels. AF speed and accuracy were one of the lens's strong suits, and we gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Optical quality and the quality of the results. The Panny delivers sharp results across the frame straight from f4, and it only really gets worse when diffraction sets in at about f11. If you shoot landscape or architecture and you're a micro four thirds shooter, I think overall you're going to be pleased with the results that the 7-14 is capable of delivering. It's not, however, without its issues, as there are some strange flare patterns and chromatic aberration is definitely present, But it's not a huge distraction and no worse than other wide-angle lenses. We thought the 7-14 delivered results that would in fact please nearly every client out there, and we gave it a 9 for optical quality and a 9.5 for the quality of the results. Value. As we mentioned previously, if you need this wide of an angle, outside of the manual 7.5mm fisheye lens from Samyang, Rokinon, Bauer, etc., they're all the same lens with different branding, then the only real option in ultra-wide-angle photography and micro four thirds is this Panny 7-14, at least until Olympus debuts the 7-14 Pro in 2015. Now, I complain about this lens's high price, but truth be told, the 7-14 is in fact a competent and very capable lens that delivers the goods optically. Sure, I wish the lens were weather sealed and made out of more robust materials, but there's nothing here that stands out as a critically bad item. In fact, all in, the Panny is a really nice lens and a decent value. We gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Overall, it's a 45 out of 50 and just squeaks out our highly recommended rating. The final word. If you're considering making the switch to micro four thirds and you shoot landscape, architecture, then the only real option in ultra-wide photography today is the Panny 7-14. It's not cheap, but fortunately it does offer a reasonable build and really, really good optics. But to answer the original question, is this combination of a micro four thirds camera and this lens good enough to wean a professional off a DSLR and into the world of micro four thirds? Well, after carefully going over the results, I think the answer is a pretty solid yes. Yes, it is. However, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I just wish there were more options and competitive lenses for ultra-wide-angle shooting in the world of micro four thirds. But at least the one option available is a good one. Though, I actually await Olympus's 7-14 f2.8 Pro Series lens. This is Darren Miles with Darren Miles Photography based here in beautiful, sunny Naples, Florida. If you like these reviews, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until the next time, happy shooting.